In the remote wilderness of the Pacific Northwest, there lies a dense forest known as the Blackwood. Its reputation for being dark, tangled, and utterly disorienting was well earned. Only the bravest of hikers ventured into its depths, and even they couldn't predict what horrors awaited them. One summer evening, a group of 3 friends decided to take on the challenge of navigating the Blackwood Forest, armed with flashlights, compasses, and an old, tattered map. They set out as the sun began to dip below the horizon. The forest was eerily quiet, except for the occasional rustle of leaves in the wind and the distant hoot of an owl. The trees were so tightly packed that even the setting sun's feeble light barely penetrated the canopy, casting long, eerie shadows that danced around them. Hours passed, and the friends began to realize that they were hopelessly lost. They couldn't find any recognizable landmarks from the map, and their compasses seemed to spin randomly, offering no guidance. Panic set in as the darkness deepened. As they stumbled through the underbrush, they noticed strange markings on some of the trees, twisted symbols carved into the bark, seemingly pointing in different directions. It was impossible to tell whether these markings were a product of nature or something more sinister. Their flashlights began to flicker and die, one by one, plunging them into complete darkness. Frantic whispers filled the air as the friends huddled together, their sense of dread intensifying with each passing moment. Then, from the inky blackness, they heard something. Soft, chilling laughter echoing through the trees. It was unlike any laughter they had ever heard, filled with malevolence and madness. They tried to call out for help, but their voices seemed to get swallowed by the forest. The laughter grew louder, drawing closer, until they could feel a cold breath on their necks. Terrified, they started to run, blindly crashing through the forest. Branches tore at their skin, roots tripped them up, and the relentless laughter pursued them. Finally, as dawn broke, they stumbled out of the Blackwood Forest. Their clothes were torn, faces scratched and bloodied. They looked back, half expecting to see some nightmarish creature emerging from the darkness. But there was nothing. To this day, the 3 friends refuse to speak about their nightmarish ordeal in the Blackwood Forest. They know that they were not alone that night, and that whatever was with them in the darkness still waits among the twisted trees, ready to ensnare the next lost soul who dares to venture too deep into its depths. Mark Henderson was a man of rationality and skepticism. He prided himself on his ability to explain away the unexplained, to find reason where others saw only fear. Little did he know that one fateful night would shatter his beliefs and plunge him into a nightmarish ordeal that defied all explanation. It was a moonless night in late October when Mark found himself driving along a desolate stretch of highway in the heart of rural Texas. He had been visiting a friend's cabin deep in the woods for a weekend getaway. As the clock struck midnight, Mark decided it was time to return to civilization. The road was narrow, winding through a dense thicket of ancient oak trees. Their branches reached out like gnarled fingers, casting eerie shadows across the pavement. Mark's headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the twisted forms of the trees. But he was confident in his sense of direction and his trusty GPS. However, as the miles rolled on, Mark began to notice something odd. The GPS indicated that he was on the right route, but the surroundings seemed to be repeating. The same gnarled oak tree, the same bend in the road, and the same eerie shadows. He shook his head, attributing it to fatigue and a trick of the mind. Then, just as doubt began to creep in, His headlights revealed a figure on the road ahead. It was a woman, her dress tattered and her hair matted with dirt. Mark slowed his car to a stop and rolled down the window. "Are you okay?" he called out to her. The woman's eyes were wide with terror as she approached the car. She spoke in a trembling voice. "Please help me. I've been lost in these woods for hours. My car broke down, and I can't find my way back." Mark felt a pang of sympathy and unlocked the door. "Get in. I'll take you to the nearest town." As the woman settled into the passenger seat, Mark noticed that she was shivering despite the warm night. Her gaze remained fixed on the road ahead as if she expected something to leap out of the darkness at any moment. Mark attempted to make small talk, asking her about her name and how she ended up in the woods at this hour, but she seemed hesitant to answer. Instead, she muttered something about a curse and how she should never have ventured into these woods. Just as Mark was about to ask her more, the car's engine sputtered and died. The headlights flickered and went out, plunging them into total darkness. Panic gripped Mark as he fumbled for his flashlight, casting its feeble beam around the car. The woman's breathing grew labored, and she clutched Mark's arm with a vice-like grip. "They're here," she whispered, her voice quivering. Mark's heart pounded as he strained his ears, listening to the eerie sounds that surrounded them. It was as if the very woods had come alive, whispering and rustling in an unsettling chorus. Shadows danced on the periphery of his vision, taking on grotesque and unnatural forms. In the distance, Mark saw a faint, ghostly light. It flickered and beckoned, illuminating a path through the trees. The woman urged him to follow it, claiming it was their only hope. With no other option, Mark followed the ethereal glow, the forest seeming to close in around them. As they walked, Mark's sense of time and reality blurred. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were no longer in the world he knew. The woman spoke in cryptic riddles, warning Mark that the woods held secrets beyond his comprehension. Hours turned into days, and Mark's strength waned. He couldn't remember how they had survived, foraging for food and water in the surreal landscape. The woman's presence remained an enigma, her eyes haunted by a knowledge Mark couldn't grasp. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the nightmarish journey ended. Mark found himself standing at the edge of the woods, the first rays of dawn breaking through the trees. The woman was gone, leaving Mark with nothing but a profound sense of unease. He stumbled back to his car, which miraculously started without issue. As he drove away from the cursed woods, he couldn't help but question his own sanity. What had happened during that long, harrowing night? Was it a hallucination, a dream, or something far more sinister? Mark Henderson never spoke of his midnight descent into the heart of those haunted woods. To this day, he carries the weight of an experience that defies explanation, a terrifying encounter with the unknown that shattered his once unshakable skepticism. Sarah had always been intrigued by the macabre and the mysterious. Her fascination led her to work as a night shift operator at a small, old-fashioned phone service center. The job was quiet, mostly dealing with routine inquiries, until one chilling night when an unknown call would test her courage and sanity. It was a moonless night, and the dimly lit office was awash in a ghostly blue glow from the computer screens. The only sounds were the faint hum of machinery and the occasional distant rumble of a passing train. Sarah sat alone in her cubicle, listening to the soft drone of white noise from the other phones. As the clock ticked past midnight, a shrill, archaic ring cut through the silence, startling her. It was an old rotary phone that hadn't rung in years. Staring at it in disbelief, she hesitated before picking up the receiver. A crackling, static-filled voice whispered, Help me." The voice was barely audible, distorted by interference, and sent shivers down Sarah's spine. She replied, "Who is this? How can I help you?" The voice on the other end sounded desperate. "They're coming for me. I'm trapped. You have to help me." Sarah's instincts told her that this was a prank or a wrong number, but something about the voice made her heart race. It was filled with raw fear. She traced the call, but the screen displayed only gibberish characters and an unknown location. Frantic whispers continued from the other end. "They're getting closer. Please, you have to save me." Driven by an inexplicable sense of duty, Sarah decided to act. She called the local authorities and provided them with the little information she had. Meanwhile, the voice on the other end grew more panicked, describing chilling details of pursuit through a dark forest. Sarah pleaded with the caller, "Stay on the line. Help is on the way." But just as the sirens of approaching police cars became audible through the phone, the caller let out a blood-curdling scream, followed by an ominous silence. The police traced the call to an abandoned cabin in the nearby woods. What they found there sent shockwaves through the community. The cabin was in ruins, its walls marred with strange symbols, and the air was thick with an eerie, otherworldly presence. There was no sign of the caller, and the search proved futile. No one knew who had made that phantom call, and it remained an unsolved mystery that haunted Sarah for the rest of her life. To this day, she couldn't shake the feeling that something supernatural had reached out to her that fateful night. The chilling voice, the eerie symbols, and the inexplicable disappearance were a constant reminder that some mysteries are best left untouched, and that the line between the living and the unknown is thinner than we dare to imagine. Thank you for joining us on this journey through these bone-chilling lost at-night horror stories. If you enjoyed the tales of terror, don't forget to hit that like button. Share this video with your friends and subscribe to our channel, Spooksville, for more spine-tingling stories. Your support keeps the scares coming, and we can't wait to share more nightmares with you. Until next time, stay spooky.